Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 12 glitch in the matrix and supernatural stories for you. We start off with light in the form of magic. Case file number 2490, written by A New Chapter of Life. The red one landed left, the white one right. Since January, I've had 2 occurrences where tiny, size of the metal part of a ballpoint pen, appear and float down in a specific pattern that I can't explain. I guess the best way to describe it is as they're dancing. The first was bright red, constant, floated down until it landed on my left arm, and then disappeared. I felt relief and was not scared, but after looking up what it could be and finding nothing but physical ailments, I booked an appointment to get my eyes checked and replaced my CO2 detectors. Everything is good there, and I almost forgot about it. That brings me to tonight. I'm sitting on the couch, and from about 15 feet up in my living room, I see a tiny flash. It's a tiny white flashing speck. It's floating, dancing, down. And as it gets between my son and I, he looks at me and says, "Mom, do you see that? What is it?" And it landed on my right arm and disappeared. I am entirely confused, and now I have proof that it's not me having a medical emergency. I'm not going crazy. It's not dehydration or being overtired, not carbon monoxide. It was real, and they're beautiful. Can someone please let me know what it is I could be experiencing? I've made a mental note to write down if anything changes for me after these experiences. My mom asked me if I felt anything when it landed either time. I can just say absolute wonderment. I can't stop thinking about it. Well, yeah, very good that you had your son as a witness. Now you know something really is there. We have these tiny black dots where reality doesn't seem to render for a brief period of time, usually very tiny. And now we have bright white dots. Is it more like an excitement of a given area where the black dots are lack of rendering? The white dots are over-rendering. Case file number 2491, written by Middle Chemistry 5251. 1 beach, 2 realities. My friend, Kate, and I were walking along the beach. So as I was aware, we were going to meet Kate's sister from the other side of the rocks that separates the beach. While looking ahead, I see Kate's sister on the rocks. I see her waving at us, and I tell, "Kate, look, there she is." And Kate waves, and sees her too. In her side, she saw her sister getting down from the rocks onto the other side. I still kept seeing her wave, looked away, and she wasn't there, so I assumed she already got down. As we went to the other side of the beach, we noticed there was no one. Kate asked me, "Did you see her go anywhere else?" I wasn't sure since we both saw her on the rocks standing there, waving, and then not there on the other side as we thought. Then we looked back where we came from. There it is. We find Kate's sister. We asked her, "We just saw you standing on the rocks waving at us." Kate's sister was confused. Like she told us, no, she just got here to meet us. What's weird to us is we both saw the same person, but Kate, however, saw her sister do something else. Well, I saw a different version of Kate's sister. I saw only half of her body waving from the rocks. These rocks are very rough and can cut you if you're not careful. For Kate, she saw her sister standing on the rocks, getting down, not really waving, but more like saying, "Over here." Case file number 2492, written by Gnomish 8. Altitude, Attitude, and an Uninvited Wingman. For years, I flew search and rescue, and the organization I flew with had gotten our wing a new mountain rescue plane, turboprop with FLIR. The downside, we had to go pick it up a state and a half away. As one of the few IFR certified pilots in our local organization, I was tasked with flying it back. So we planned our mission out. Roger and I would fly out after getting lunch as the plane wasn't available until 4 p.m. Then he would fly one back and I'd get our new one. Knowing we were going to have to go over the Cascade Range, we were required to take oxygen with us. This is important later on. The flight was uneventful. We got out, stretched, signed the paperwork, programmed the radio to our region's frequencies. Pre-flight, agreed on a radio channel to use for our comms, and got ready to head out. For the most part, the flight back was pretty uneventful. We started our climb above the mountain range and put our oxygen on. However, as we're crossing over the Cascades, my radio crackled to life. "Hey, Gnomish 8, traffic 2 o'clock high, looks like we're converging." As I'm looking through the clouds, I see what he's talking about. A triangle of all white lights. I keyed back up. "You sure they're converging? Those nav lights are white. Looks like we're behind them." "I'm positive. Been watching them for a few minutes now. Also, notice they don't have beacons on. Never seen that lighting configuration either. Kinda weird." "Yeah, kinda is. Keep an eye on it." After about 15 minutes, it was now at my 3 o'clock, and I was only able to see lights through the clouds, but it appeared to be tracking us. I was a little nervous about a collision, but given the clouds, I couldn't be certain just how close it was, so I chimed up to Seattle Center. "Seattle Center, can I get a proximity check? Nearby aircraft seems to be converging on us, but with weather conditions I can't be certain just yet. Do our flight plans converge?" Seattle Center let me know that the only other aircraft with me was Rogers, and that our flight plan was still clear and safe. Weird. We continued on, closely watching this supposedly non-existent set of lights in the sky, easily following us. After about 30 minutes, it got more interesting. A fourth light came on, and then, all of a sudden, it shot straight up, faster than I've ever seen anything ascend, and I've seen rocket launches and F-15s in full afterburner climb. This easily put them both to shame, and just like that it was gone. Roger and I talked about it quite a bit on the way back. We had never seen anything like it. We reported it during our debrief, and the organization chalked it up to hypoxia, even though we both saw it, and were both on oxygen. I still have no idea what it was we saw. However, we're not the only ones that have seen this pattern of lights. Apollo 17 took an image that looked very similar on a moonwalk. A local Fox station reported them over Detroit in 2013, and many more sightings. I don't think it was hypoxia. I don't think it was either. UFOs! Case file number 2493, written by Pristine Culture, 847. The Laugh That Solved the Matrix. I read here many stories of glitches, and they are so crazy that sometimes they need crazy explanations to make them make sense. I have experienced my share of those, but finding an explanation for them is difficult, and might even be extremely bizarre. But a rational explanation sometimes works. I remember many years ago, I was home in the middle of the afternoon. I was peckish, so I grabbed some fresh sweet bread from the pantry, put it on the table, cut a nice thick slice of it, left the slice on the table, turned around and put the sweetbread back in the pantry. Then I go grab the slice of sweetbread from the table, and it's gone. I thought I was going crazy. A true glitch in the Matrix indeed. I even felt nervous and sick when I saw that the slice was gone. What the heck just happened? I felt dizzy and concerned about my mental health. I knew I cut a slice of sweetbread and put it on that table. Now it's gone. I started thinking maybe I was somehow sleepwalking and woke up. I did have a very interesting sleepwalking adventure back then. Anyway, I was still very much peckish, so once again I got the sweetbread out of the pantry again. This time, I would not take my eyes off of it. I cut another slice and started eating it before it disappeared into thin air. As I was eating it, I started hearing muffled laughter that grew louder and louder. I froze in place. I look under the kitchen table, and what do I find? My silly cousin was under the kitchen table eating my slice of sweetbread. Somehow he had gotten inside our house and was hiding under the kitchen table the whole time I had been home. He has a voracious appetite and does anything to get his hands on food. Having sneakily stolen my sweetbread when I wasn't looking, he was now devouring it under the table. Besides eating, he laughs a lot, a very particular crazy sounding laugh that everyone in town recognizes from a mile away. His laughter gave him away. If it wasn't for that, I would have lived life believing I had experienced a glitch in the Matrix. I have so many stories about my cousin. Having moved half a world away, I haven't seen him in over 10 years. May you be happy, and may we see each other again. Well, this is cute, and I like including little stories like this where it's not a glitch, but in another light. Again, if he hadn't known his cousin was there, it definitely would have been considered a glitch, right? A classic DOP. Now, obviously, I don't think every DOP instance is because someone has a cousin hiding in the closet or under the kitchen table. But it is good to remember that sometimes there is a rational explanation. Just keep that in mind. Case file number 2494, written by United Software 5084. Caught between golf carts and glitches. Setting and backstory. I, 42 female, work at a summer camp in upstate New York. I'm a nurse, and the infirmary is right across a little golf cart path from an open-sided shed called the Milk Station. The Milk Station is a roof held up by 7-foot-tall 4x4s in each corner. There is no obstruction of view from any side. The health center parks our golf cart on a little gravel spot next to the stairs to the clinic. It's loud, crunchy gravel, and is definitely noticeable when someone parks there. This space is directly across a 5-foot-wide golf cart path from the Milk Station. Just so everyone can picture this, the area where the story takes place is about 20 feet of linear space from the Milk Station to the parking spot. You cannot be looking toward the clinic and the golf cart parking from the Milk Station and not see it. There are absolutely no obstructions to the view. It's just an open path, no bushes or plantings on either side. Okay, one day, near the end of summer of 2019, I left the clinic with a coworker to go across to the other side of the camp. We walked down the steps of the clinic and got into the golf cart to drive to the other side. There were 2 other staff members eating lunch and talking while sitting at the Milk Station. We waved, made small talk, and left. 10 minutes later, we got back to the clinic, parked the cart, and as I exited the cart, my butt hit the bike bell we had mounted on the side rails. I laughed at myself for making such an obnoxious exit to the golf cart. As I walked around the cart, I looked over at the Milk Station to make a self-depreciating joke about the bell, but noted that the other staff members had gone. I went inside the clinic and dropped off my things, and then walked back outside about 5 minutes later to walk down to my cabin. As I walked down the steps, I noted that the other 2 staff members had come back to the Milk Station and were seated where they had previously been when I first left. They looked surprised to see me, and asked when I had come back. I said a few minutes before, and then asked them where they had gone. They looked genuinely confused and said they hadn't gone anywhere. They hadn't left the Milk Station the entire time, and hadn't seen us come back to the clinic. I was bewildered. I told them about hitting the bell with my butt and checking the station for them when we returned, and they were definitely not there. They were equally bewildered, because they had not seen nor heard us drive back up or get out and pass within 10 feet of them to go back into the clinic. I wanted to verify all this with my friend, so I called her out of the clinic and, without any explanation, we asked her if she had seen them when they had returned to the clinic. She said no, they hadn't been there. That she had looked over to make a joke about them taking an extra long break, but that they weren't there. None of the 4 of us were ever able to explain why we hadn't been able to see or hear the other pair on our return to the clinic. I work at this camp every summer, and nothing like this has ever happened since then. This is as close to a glitch in the Matrix as I've ever had come in my life. This is just one of those instances of split realities where you're seeing a reality, it's truly there, but it's just not your universe. And it's almost like a split in the land, but it's more because the membranes are close by to these universes. So what you see isn't your originating universe. Now, who was in which, I don't know, can get confusing for sure. Case file number 2495, written by Hamkill. Above the fridge lies madness. My wife and I are very much creatures of habit. Every night after work and hanging out, doing our thing, we prep for the morning. We both work very early, so this sets us up for success. We do a meal shake for breakfast, and I pack us each a lunch that's usually some sort of grain salad. On the weekends, sometimes we make each other a nice breakfast. Something hot, like pancakes or a big American breakfast. Anything that's not cold like the shakes we've had all week. Which is why I found it strange that one day, going about our routine, my wife was pulling down our KitchenAid mixer from above the fridge and let out a, "What the hell?" I walked into the kitchen and asked, "What's up?" In her hand was a box of opened, not stale, barely eaten, Whole Food brand Honey Nut Cheerio knockoff cereal. What the hell indeed. Neither of us drink much milk, we don't eat cereal, and we rarely have people over to spend the night, much less bring food. We immediately start going through all of our valuables. Nothing is missing or out of place, just a box of cereal on top of the fridge that we never bought. Classic multiverse DOP, where the you guys over there lost cereal, because over there you're ravenous cereal consumers. Or just like it occasionally, I don't know. Case file number 2496, written by Susan the House Cat. Fairies start as shrimp, obviously. When I was a kid, I was super into fairies and mystical crap like that. I lived near a small forest and long field with a stream going through the middle of it. The woods started at the end of the field, and the same stream followed through into the woods. In the stream water, you'd often see these tiny little gray shrimp-like things along the edges on rocks. One day I asked my mom what they were, and she told me they were fairies. I was like, why don't they look like fairies? You know, the stereotypical fairies, little people with wings. And she explained to me that's what they look like as babies, like caterpillars into butterflies. This made 100% sense to me as a small child, so it was good enough for me. And that basically became fact for me. I actually still call the little shrimp things fairies. People always give me such confused looks, so I have to explain. Anyway, one day, this wasn't too long before I would stop believing in fairies and other things, but I was on the edge of the belief still. I was walking into the woods. I think I was with my mom and sister, and they had walked on ahead without me a little. It was a small forest. I knew my way around, no chance of getting lost. And I was at this intersection, where the stream branches off into about 4 different directions. And I don't know what I was doing, but I suddenly stopped and looked up, and not too far away from me, I saw this thing. It was small, probably about 2 inches, and floating. It was such a weird shape, it was like a plumb bob, but the neck was shorter, and it had a head, which is kind of shaped like a small tulip, but it didn't have a face or eyes or any sort of details really. Not that I could see it, at least. And it had what I assume were wings, but didn't flap up and down or back and forth. They spun around the neck, like helicopter blades. But it didn't just float, it darted. Up, diagonal, pause left, pause right. And it wasn't a windy day, there was no gust of wind. And even if there were, it didn't move like something manipulated by wind. It's hard to explain. If it wasn't for the way it moved and the shape of it, I would think it was one of those falling things, or maybe even a dragonfly, but it was so clear to me at the time. I was certain it was neither of those things. I always try to remember what color it was, but I just can't. But the shape I perfectly recall, because I drew it over and over again for months after I saw it. I watched it for a long moment. I was amazed, transfixed. There was no doubt in my mind that I was witnessing a fairy, a real-life fairy. It made sense to me that they wouldn't look like the fairies in the books when they are born as shrimp things. Obviously, they'd be more insect-like. I looked away for a second to see if my mom and sister were still in view, and called them, shouting, "Mom, Mom, I found a fairy!" But when I looked back, it was gone. My mom came over thinking I meant the fairies, shrimp things, but I was like, no, I mean a real fairy. She was like, "Oh wow, really?" You know the way adults do when they're trying to humor a child, but the child doesn't pick up on it? Yeah. I didn't pick up on it, so I made a fool of my little self trying to explain it to her. She obviously thought I was making it up, playing pretend or something. But although I was very imaginative as a kid, I never did anything like that. I never claimed anything I was pretending was real, and before this, I'd never actually seen anything, not even imaginary. Now I wonder if it was just my child brain having a fanny attack and going a bit wonky, hallucinating. But I've never hallucinated anything before in my life, so why would I have hallucinated for that one moment? And like I said, maybe I just saw that one thing and looked like something else. But although I only watched it for a moment, it was still long enough to get a clear view of it. The shape of it was so odd and specific, it just stood out to me. It was one of those moments where everything else just seemed still. Anyways, these days I don't believe in fairies, but this is a memory I have, and belief, or lack of, doesn't change what I saw. So while it might not have been a fairy, it definitely was something very odd. Yeah, so back to possible rational explanations. It could have just been some kind of insect that you weren't aware of, maybe one that isn't even discovered. I mean, the world is a big place, so we never know about that. Or maybe, hell, it could have been a real fairy, I don't know. Always open that door to possibilities, even if very remote. Case file number 2497, written by Other Cantaloupe, 4765. Lamps out, phone's dead, sanity slipping. This is so bizarre, and it honestly scared the crap out of me. I was just so unsettled that I contacted my mother at 4 a.m. just to tell her about it. To give some details about a couple objects first, I keep a wedge pillow on or near my bed, because sometimes I like to sit up in bed to read or play on my phone. It's more comfortable to do that when you can lean back against that wedge pillow. It's fairly large and bulky. It's somewhat heavy, mostly because it's dense, unlike a normal pillow. And I have an alley migraine lamp. It's a cylindrical object that emits green light, however it can also emit normal, white light when you turn it on upside down. The charger port is located on top when it's oriented to show green light. I can't charge it when it's oriented to show white light, because that means the charger port is on the bottom. It's on my nightstand. So I get home to my apartment and change into pajamas. It's about midnight, but I'm not super tired because I'd just been at a friend's house, and we'd been drinking coffee while we talked. But I wanted to actually lie down, so I sat on my bed, tossed my wedge pillow onto the floor away from my bed, and plugged in my alley lamp because it was completely dead. Obviously, if I had it plugged in, it was oriented to show green light. I plugged my phone into its charger and snuggled into bed. My phone screen settings are set to always be on. It does not go to sleep automatically. I have to physically turn it off if I want it to be off. I hopped into one of my games to play it before I went to bed. It was at a point where I wouldn't have quit right then. 3 hours later, I wake up slumped up against my wedge pillow in bed. My alley lamp is unplugged and showing white light. My phone has been turned off and the charger was unplugged from my phone and the outlet. I was immediately confused, and that confusion quickly turned into fear. If it were just one thing, I would have probably just brushed it off. But it's multiple things, and I remember with 100% certainty that I left everything the exact opposite. Well, maybe you did it in your sleep. I don't sleepwalk ever, but let's explore that possible explanation anyways. You're telling me that in my sleep I walked across my room to get a big, bulky pillow, situated on my bed, unplug and turn my lamp upside down, shut off my phone, unplug the charger from my phone and the outlet. No way. I was so terrified, honest to God. I immediately contacted my mom because I was just panicking. She suggested it was a glitch in the Matrix, which is pretty much the only explanation I can think of. It's so bizarre I feel scared just thinking about it. Well, I do know that people, when they sleepwalk, their mental faculties are actually more checked in than you think. Some people have been known to drive while sleepwalking, operate heavy machinery while sleepwalking. It's wild the things we can do. So I can't discount that, though this doesn't fit perfectly, because you don't have any history of sleepwalking. So maybe it's not that. Maybe it is a glitch in the Matrix where you thought you plugged in your phone and the lamp was situated a different way because it was a different universe site. That could definitely happen. Case file number 2498, written by Cherry every moment. Pressed 5, got 7. This happened to me back in 2019, when I had barely heard of Glitch in the Matrix stories. I've been wanting to share it somewhere, because sharing it with my friends and family only earned me some looks. Confused, crazy looks. I used to think this was some kind of paranormal event, but seeing stories about glitches in the Matrix, made me realize this actually fits the bill perfectly. Anyways, I was working in a PBO company here in southern Philippines. The company that I was working at had 7 floors and then a rooftop. I was a trainee at that time, so I planned to head towards my locker, which was at the 5th floor, before proceeding to our training room, which is at the 6th floor. My roommate and I were in the elevator, and I remember how it was just the both of us. I remember being the one to press the 5th floor button. We got to the 5th floor, and I recall being slightly bothered by how quiet it was. We saw no one else around, not even the security guard that every floor has. But we ignored it, put our bags in our lockers, and headed back towards the elevator, so we can get to the 6th floor. We waited for a few minutes before I started getting anxious because I knew we were about to be late. So then I turned towards the door to the stairs and invited my roommate to just take the stairs. After all, it was just a couple of steps up. She was very hesitant at first, because she didn't like the stairs very much. No one frequented it, so it was creepy and dusty. But I told her we didn't have a choice because, for some reason, the elevator wasn't stopping at the correct floor at all. So I opened the door towards the stairs. I led the way, even though it took a while for my roommate to follow me. When I got to the top of the stairs, the first and only door that greeted me was the door towards the rooftop, which didn't make any sense, so I started laughing, convinced I think that I was being punked or something. So just thinking it was a prank somehow. When my roommate caught up to me, she started laughing with me as well because it was bizarre. But the longer we stood with it, the more I realized that there was no way this was a prank. It was no joke, we really were in front of the rooftop door. I looked down at the door we came out of, and my roommate had left it open. So I walked back down to prove a point to nobody in particular, and went back inside. I promise you, when I went back in, I was baffled and astounded to see the 7th floor sign. The security guard that guarded the elevator was there. Employees were rushing out of the elevator and were frozen there. It was impossible. Until now, it's hard to believe that this happened to me. But it wasn't just me who experienced this. It was both my roommate and I. It couldn't have been a hallucination. And it wasn't. And all that needs to be said is, elevators, if you know, you know. Case file number 2499, written by Goddess Lindsay. The portal at the bottom of the stairs. About 12 years ago, my son and niece, who were both about 2 or 3 at the time, were playing in the backyard of my parents' house. There were several of us there. It was a nice summer day. My son and niece started arguing over a toy they were playing with, like toddlers do. It was a square toy, about the size of an Etch-a-Sketch. That's kind of what it looked like. It wasn't a small toy. My son got mad and threw the toy deep into the barn, which had the door open. I watched it fly inside the barn. This barn is only small, but was jam-packed with things and garbage and old broken stuff. I looked inside the best I could to try to find it. A few of us looked for it because my niece was crying for it, and we wanted her to not be upset. However, none of us could find it. Eventually, she got over it, and we didn't look anymore. About 10 minutes later, I go into the house to get something, and that toy is laying at the bottom of the staircase. The exact toy, which we only had one of. There is no explanation. Also, same house, same staircase. My dad lost his screwdriver. Couldn't find it anywhere. They show up in the same spot at the bottom of the stairs without explanation. Makes you think, in these DOP events, if they occupy the same universe, are there specific spots where items just pop out of and stay temporarily? Maybe this is one of those, at the bottom of the staircase. I wonder if other objects will pop up there, not just from yourself. Things that don't just belong to you or your family. Case file number 2500, written by Rage Reset. One stormy night, except it wasn't. The best ghost story I know came from my mother a few years ago. She absolutely wouldn't make something like this up. A few years ago, she was alone at home one night as my father was away. She's heavily into family history and had recently received one of my nan's diaries. She'd passed 10 years earlier and started reading through it. After some minutes, maybe 10, it starts pouring rain. Rain is lashing the windows. Wind is high. She keeps on reading. Now their house overlooks the water and has timber-frame floor-to-floor windows all the way along it. Suddenly, a sort of invisible shockwave rattles all the windows from one end of the house to the other. Just as she's thinking it could have been a gust of wind, every single intercom in the house blasts out a staticky bzzzt at the top volume. They stay like that continually. She goes downstairs to the master intercom and turns it off. The house falls silent, except for the storm. She then notices that every picture on the wall, they have pictures everywhere, is seriously askew, all of them. And they weren't like that an hour before. So she goes back upstairs, closes the diary, and says, "Sorry, Nan," and puts the diary in a cupboard. The rain dies down, and she calls it a night as she has to work the next day. It gets to work and runs into a coworker who lives maybe 10 houses away in the same street, same side of the street. She asks him how was that rainstorm last night, and he replies that they didn't get any rain. They spent their evening on the balcony, having a barbecue. This reminds me of the scene in The Haunting of Hill House. No spoilers really, but there's a storm event that happens in there, and it's just interesting that there's always parallels between fiction and reality. As they often say, reality is stranger than fiction. Case file number 2501, written by RFK Van 9112. They blink, they build, they breathe in fog. For about a year after it started, I searched for logical answers. It wasn't migraines or seizures or light sources from outside. It wasn't dust motes, and I didn't have other household environmental causes. It started to occur around a pagan and Wiccan holiday. Worth noting that I was having dreams of an odd quality during this time too. Kept going strong for a month and a half, then seemingly stopped for a brief period before continuing. The next year, it started to be very active at the exact same time period of the year. The activity has come and gone in waves in the 2 years since it started in earnest. Never long without some form of contact. I'd seen them before, just never enough to trigger curiosity about what they were. Perhaps I just didn't want to see them. Perhaps I couldn't. 2 years is also a significant number for me, as I've been in remission from substances for just over 2.5 years. And something tells me that these things could be connected. Not filling my body with strong poisons constantly has somehow strengthened my sight, as it were. I can also see these things, as well as my own form and the details of the surrounding room, even when I close my eyes shut as tight as possible in the pitch dark. I appeared to have decalcified the pineal gland through recovery, therapy, and meditation. I also had occasion where one other person was able to see exactly what I was seeing, these lights, which was certainly a relief as none of the medical reasons I was exploring panned out. For whatever reason, the sighting did not trigger any curiosity in my friend, who wrote it off. I've noticed that most of these lights have a playful quality to them. They have all sorts of colors and consistency, strobing patterns versus solid. I mostly see white lights, but occasionally also yellow, orange, red, black, and more rarely, green, blue, and purple. It's like a cycle that goes in a certain order. It seems to me the solid white and yellow ones are somewhat of an advanced group to test the waters, slowly blinking into existence in narrow shafts of muted light before taking orb shape. If I let the process pan out over 2 to 3 hours, it tends to build up. The oranges and reds start showing up after, sometimes blinking. This is when the show really begins. Huge, billowy, tattered curtain-like black ones sometimes show up, with some type of mist or fog surrounding them that continues growing in size around them, in whatever room I'm in. I'm not going to lie, I've gotten some pretty bad vibes from them. The red, green, blue, and purple lights seem to put off a mixed bag of vibes, with the rest seeming positive or neutral. It's like there's 2 sides, one playful and joyous, one more sinister. The whole cycle builds to a climax, with all of these things surrounding at once, and the strobing effect intensifies to the point where the room I'm observing these things in ends up looking like a disco. Wild colors flying everywhere, now including the rarer color lights, even washing the walls in bright color, strobing fast while the fog and mist from the black ones builds. At some point it all starts to happen in reverse and wind down. Had I not gotten a couple brain scans, I'd for sure think I was having seizures, or have a massive tumor eating away at my brain. But I have done all that, and I had a witness one time. So what the hell is this? Honestly, I have no clue what it is, but this does tie back to the first story where someone had a witness as well, their son. This mother saw these lights floating down and touching them. The first one was more subdued. This one is more advanced. Could it be some sort of probing system from aliens? I don't know, that's quite a stretch, but I don't know. Now time for the jokes of the day. My 11-year-old son came up with this. What's a humiliated musical instrument called? An accordion. What do you call a woman standing in the middle of a tennis court? A net. I got fired from the keyboard factory. They said I wasn't putting in enough shifts. I'm putting my 6-year-old to bed and he says, Dad, I have kidneys. You have dad knees. I just found out Albert Einstein was a real person. All this time I just thought he was a theoretical physicist. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony, signing off.